Welcome back to This Week in Bevy. This week, the first Bevy 0.16 release candidate, 0.16RC1, is out. We've been talking about the features landing in this release over the past few months in This Week in Bevy, so if you want to go check out things like error handling in systems, definitely go check out the release candidate. Now is the right time to test your apps and file any issues that may be important to you for the major release. Bevy Lint 0.2 is also out this week with new lints, better Windows support, and more. Bevy Lint is part of the Bevy CLI working group, who has also been making some great progress on the Bevy CLI as well. Also this week, Settletopia gets modding support, Greenfeet Haven gets a Steam demo, and POLDERS becomes Waterwolf. And required components has been around for a while at this point, but as of 18.309, associated constants can be specified directly when requiring the component type they're associated with. The PR shows off a locked axis component with locked axis rotation locked as an associated const, which is a little bit implicit, but is a nice UX improvement. If you're unfamiliar with what an associated constant is, you can see this example from Avian 3D, which mirrors the PR. And if we click on source, you can see impl locked axes has a pub const rotation locked. And next up, the Bevy release notes and blog post are stellar artifacts produced every release cycle, which is particularly relevant since we have a release candidate out now. Producing them is a lot of work that is a high-risk category for causing burnout. The Better Release Notes working group has put together and merged now a set of recommendations for building the release notes moving forward to make the process more maintainable and incremental over the course of a development cycle, rather than being one big push at the end. And 0.16 is going to be the no standard release, so it's nice to see a new folder of examples, no standard, was added in 18.333. The first example, no standard library, demonstrates how to make a no standard compatible Bevy library, catering to an audience that may not even know what no standard is yet. And then we've got some simplifications to how iOS is linked. This results in a great simplification in 14.780, avoiding some of the complexity of the previous approach, and now using rustc. Check out the new approach in the mobile example in the mobile folder. And of course, Alice's merge train over on Blue Sky these days is a maintainer level view into active PRs and how the Bevy sausage is made. And that brings us into the showcases with Settletopia, which got modding support this week. This is the integration of modding support into Settletopia using WIT, W-I-T, and Wasmtime. The mods are written in Rust with provided Rust libraries to simplify development. The game's default configuration will be published as mods, allowing players to clone, modify, and extend it. And the project authors state that Rust's tooling bring major benefits, including documentation, static type checking, and access to the Rust library ecosystem. Next up, we've got our first Bevy 0.16 RC1 demo. This is a 2D isometric world with mission buttons integrated into the 2D isometric world map. And it's nice to work on smaller things sometimes. This is Mercator's scene transitions, which is a shader transition to mark the transition between today and the next in-game day. Followed up by Peck, not Parry. This early demo is using Peck for collision detection rather than Parry. Peck aims to be an alternative to Parry, built with Bevy Math and Glam types. The contacts in the demo are using SAT for rectangle-rectangle contacts, and a combo of GJK and EPA and feature-based clipping for general contact manifold computation between convex polygons. Overall, it seems like the goal of this project is to include Peck in Avian and build on top of it, so maybe we'll see an experimental feature allowing us to use Peck instead of Parry. Next up, we've got Rope Cube. Use your mouse to control a cube on a rope and fling your way to the goal in this rapier physics-based game with 5 different stages. And then there's Greenfeet Haven, which gets a Steam demo this week. A year of work has gone into this new colony sim. It currently has a demo on Steam in preparation for the upcoming City Builder Festival. On the technical side, this project is about 70,000 lines of code. And then we've got a work in progress crate for managing hands of cards, including card selection by mouse, drag and drop, cards snapping back to their original positions, and more. And a great many things have been added to POLDERS, which is now called Waterwolf. Things like Fog of War, Villagers, Trade, a whole flippin' in-world UI system, and current work is focusing on a food system built around cheese. And we've seen this project before. This is a Unicode renderer project that now has debug signage working in the terminal. And last week we saw some of these triangulation experiments, and this week we get triangulation improvements. There's some good discussion of triangulation approaches in the Discord thread if you're interested in this topic, including the spade and geo crates, which are used by other crates as well. So definitely go check it out if you're interested in triangulation. And then we've got this Scrapland level viewer. This is a level, model, and animation viewer with a fly-through drone camera for American McGee's Scrapland. The viewer uses the VFS crate to create a virtual file system on top of the game's asset archive file format, and then uses binRW, which is another crate, for the parsing of the actual asset files. The source for this one is available on GitHub. And our next demo has a little bit of compression artifacting through a couple of compression routes, but we've got Bevy Millions Ball. This is a follow-up to the Bevy Radix Sort Crate. Bevy Millions Ball is a high-performance collision detection demo capable of simulating millions of spheres in real time. The implementation utilizes Bevy Radix Sort for spatial hashing and employs WGSL compute shaders for parallelization. And then we've got Online Boxing 3D V2. Online Boxing 3D V2 is a fully physically controlled 3D boxing game. Everything is simulated. The game has been a work in development for about 4 years, and future work includes graphics improvements and online multiplayer. The physics engine at use here is Physics. That's PHYSX. And have you ever wanted to be the space rocks and asteroids? This is Inversoids, which is a classic asteroids arcade game with a twist. Instead of dodging space rock, you control the space rock to target ships flying around. This game was made in 3 evenings for a game jam. And then we've got an update for Lumina. Lumina is a top-down, fast-paced, objective-based PvPvE game. It makes use of a number of interesting technologies, such as Radiance Cascades for global illumination, Typist, Velo, and Blenvy. The code for this one is also available on GitHub. And then we've got Factory Game Fundamentals. This is the fundamental mechanics for a factory game, including conveyor locomotion, item production, and item consumption. Items reference their conveyors using entity-containing components, much like the upcoming relationship components in 0.16, and have a progress value from 0 to 1. Progress values greater than 1 cause the output port to have a pending item, so to speak. And with that, we're into the crates. Since it is a crate, I will mention Bevy Lint 0.2 once again. Definitely something you should go check out and part of the Bevy CLI working group. And then we've got Bevy Serialization Extra 0.9. This is a library for component-oriented serialization. 0.9 is a big update with a lot of refactors, new features, performance improvements, and quality of life improvements for all of its 3 crates. And Leptos Bevy Canvas got a release. This is a crate to embed a Bevy app inside of your Leptos app. Leptos, if you're unaware, is a full-stack WASM-based framework for web development. And obviously, as you're likely aware, since this is This Week in Bevy, Bevy can also target WASM. And then we've got the first release for Bevy Skeen 0.1. Bevy Skeen allows you to work with Bevy components inside of Blender. Skeen is a Bevy plugin and a Blender add-on that work together to pull the reflection data from a Bevy app into Blender via BRP or the Bevy Remote Protocol, allow inserting and modifying components on objects, meshes, and materials in Blender, export that data back along with GLTF files, and instantiate those components automatically when spawning. Skeen also supports Blender's library overrides and drivers, which allows you to do things like tie the X, Y, and Z length of an avian cuboid collider to the size of a cube. The 0.1 release on crates.io supports Bevy 0.15, and there's a 0.16 RC compatible 0.2 release as well. Bevy Enhanced Input 0.8 is out. Bevy Enhanced Input 0.8 is a crate for dynamic and contextual input mappings for Bevy, inspired by the Unreal Engine Enhanced Input. In 0.8, trait-based context creation was replaced with triggers. And Bevy MiniQuad got a release. Bevy MiniQuad replaces Bevy's default windowing and rendering plugins with MiniQuad-based ones. This release brings the crate up to date with Bevy 0.15 and MiniQuad 0.4. And finally, Bevy Mod Scripting 0.10 is out. Bevy Mod Scripting is an initial attempt to enable scripting from within Bevy's existing framework. 0.10 brings parallelizable and parameterizable script systems. A types global is now exposed containing all the types found in the type registry, and the LAD format now supports arbitrary type through types as global instances. As always, we've got all of the other pull requests that were merged, as well as the issues and PRs that were opened this week. As we ease our way into the 0.16 release candidate process, you can start to expect fewer large features landing as the RC stabilizes for major release. And with that, I'll see you next week. Have a great rest of yours.